You did the work. You challenged the rules, let go of the rigidity, and gave yourself permission to eat the foods you'd been avoiding for years. And then the pendulum swung in the other direction. And that freedom didn't feel like freedom at all. Today, we're going to talk about what it looks like when food freedom doesn't feel the way that you thought it would and what's actually going on when that happens. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you're willing to explore some nuance today, even if it feels a little complicated. I trust that you have done real work to get where you are right now, and that you deserve a real conversation about what comes next. And I trust that if any part of today's episode resonates with you, that you will know that it is not a reflection of anything you've done wrong, but that you will leave here knowing your next step. So I don't know if I have explicitly said this, but over the last 2 weeks, what we've been exploring on the podcast is really what happens when old strategies stopped working. So 2 weeks ago, we looked at the scale as a measure of success and what it means to measure progress differently beyond just looking at the scale. Last week, we talked about what to do when weight loss is a genuine health concern and why the answer isn't another diet. And today, I'm going to close this series with something that I see regularly in my work, and it's something that really doesn't get talked about enough. But I want you to know that if you have not listened to the previous 2 episodes, this episode stands alone. You do not need the history of the past 2 episodes for this one to be valuable. And if you're interested to go back and check, I will make sure there's links directly in the show notes of this episode, so you can just go straight to those or just look in your podcast player for the last 2 weeks. You can check those out as well. But this series was really intended to be really what happens when the old strategies, the things that we've been doing for so long, stop working. So today, what we're talking about is what happens when giving yourself food freedom backfires. So I have worked with a number of people over the years who have gone through a very recognizable pattern. So I want you to listen to kind of this description and see if you can see yourself in this pattern. So here's what I've seen. These people come to me or come to this work after doing a significant amount of work elsewhere. Maybe it's another structured program, another professional, intensive work on challenging the food rules that they had lived by for years. And that work was real. There was real progress. The rules loosened. The rigidity softened. That fear around food lessened, and foods that used to feel forbidden became available. There was genuine freedom and enjoyment and pleasure around foods that used to feel terrifying. And for a while, it felt amazing. And then over time, sometimes very quickly, the pendulum swung in the other direction. And so what I've seen happen in more than a few of these situations is that freedom kind of became almost untethered, not from the rules, which really is the goal, right? We want freedom from the rules, the rigidity, that structure, the fear, the control, but really it became more untethered from the body. So eating became permissive in a way that felt liberating on one level, but really confusing on another. Often, this came with significant weight gain, lethargy, physical discomfort, maybe aches that hadn't been there before. And this really complicated mix of feelings. On the one hand, there's this genuine enjoyment of food and this relief from the exhausting grip of restriction. But on the other hand, now there's a body that doesn't feel good, not just from a how it looks perspective, but from a how it feels perspective. The body was sending signals that this way of eating, while free, wasn't the most supportive. Now, here's what I want to say really clearly about this experience. This is not a problem. It is not a failure. It is not evidence that food freedom is wrong, or that you went too far, or that you need to go back to restriction. It's a stage and it's a signal. It can be both at the same time. So if you find yourself in that position right now where you're like, yeah, I really have been working on this. I've been challenging my food freedom, but this doesn't feel like freedom. This doesn't feel good. We're going to dive deeper into why this happens and how we can really explore what's going on and what we can do next. So I also want to speak directly to something that I see happen often when people start to feel that pendulum swing towards the kind of food freedom, but feeling like maybe like kind of that permissiveness. Some people get so frightened by what they're experiencing, they go straight back to rules and restriction because at least that felt familiar. It felt like control. And I mean, I get it. It makes so much sense, right? When freedom starts to feel chaotic, that rigid structure can look like safety. But going back to restriction doesn't stop the pendulum. It just sends it in the other direction again, and the cycle continues. So I want to offer you a picture of what it looks like when the pendulum finally stops swinging. And we will get to that picture. What does it look like when I'm not swinging between pure restriction, rigidity, trying to control, or this complete permissiveness and this thing that feels like freedom, but has me eating in ways that just doesn't feel good in my body. So what we're going to talk about first is what's happening underneath all of this. And I want to talk about the difference between food freedom and body connection. These are two different things. Food freedom and body connection are both necessary, but having one doesn't automatically give you the other. So food freedom, it's the ability to eat any food without guilt, fear, or rigid rules governing every choice. It's the absence of the food police in your head. It's being able to sit down with something you used to call a forbidden food and eat it without a spiral of shame afterwards. This is so important, and it's a real thing, and it's worth working toward. And body connection is something different. It's the ability to actually hear what your body is communicating, to notice how you feel before you eat, while you are eating, and afterwards, to recognize when your body feels nourished and when it doesn't, to eat in response to what your back body actually needs, not just in response to permission. Someone can have full food freedom and very little body connection. And when that happens, eating becomes untethered. The rules are gone, which is progress, but nothing has replaced the rules as a guide. And without body connection, there is no internal compass to orient by. This is what the pendulum swing often looks like. It's not that food freedom is wrong. It's that food freedom without body connection is only half of the picture. So I want you to ask yourself right now, Where am I in terms of food freedom and body connection? Do I have one and not the other? Do I have both? Do I have neither? This question in this exploration isn't to judge yourself. It's for that awareness. We can't change what we're not aware of. So let's get really curious about, where am I in terms of body connection? And before we go any further, I want to explain why disconnection from the body makes so much sense. If you are a person who's like, yeah, I'm not very connected in my body. Maybe just this idea of body connection feels really foreign to you, or you don't even know what I'm talking about when I mention the concept of body connection. You might spend most of your time in your head. You might be a very logical thinker. A lot of people that I work with are very smart. They're very kind of book smart. They spend a lot of time in their heads and really get rewarded for it. But if the thought of actually tuning in to your body feels uncomfortable or even impossible, I want you to know it makes complete sense. There are many reasons that people disconnect from their body, and each reason has its own logic. For some people, the body has been a source of pain or shame for so long that checking in with it stopped feeling safe. For others, restriction itself created the disconnection. When you are constantly overriding your hunger signals, when you're eating according to external rules rather than internal cues, those internal cues get quieter over time. The body learns that its signals aren't being listened to, so it just stops sending them. And for others, disconnecting from the body was a way of coping with things that had nothing to do with food at all. So whatever the reason, the disconnection made sense at some point. It was protective. And building body connection isn't about forcing your way back in. It's about developing enough safety that coming back in becomes possible. Now, I also want to talk about food freedom. And I want to explain that freedom is not the same as anything goes. So I want to paint a picture and kind of offer a reframe on what food freedom actually means. Because I think there's this misunderstanding that can make the pendulum swing harder. So let's use an analogy that has nothing to do with food. Sometimes it's easier for us to understand things when we don't talk about food, when we can kind of take that highly charged topic off the table. Let's talk about Netflix. Netflix is very good at keeping you watching. They design their content with open loops, stories that don't quite resolve at the end of an episode, so you feel compelled to start the next one so you can see what happened. The next episode plays automatically. Suggestions appear for other things that you might enjoy. Netflix is a very well-engineered experience designed to keep you engaged. And it works. We have all found ourselves watching far more than we intended for any number of reasons. So what helps you turn it off? Not a rule that says you are only allowed one episode. You are bad if you watch more than one episode of Netflix. No, it's also not somebody standing over you monitoring your viewing or you reporting your viewing habits to somebody else. What actually helps, it's intention. It's a conscious choice. Thinking about how you want to feel tomorrow, or recognizing how much a good night's rest matters to you and letting that inform what you do tonight. You could keep watching. Nothing is stopping you, but you choose not to because you know how that decision lands in your body the next morning. This is kind of like freedom with Netflix. You have freedom to choose. It's all there, but you don't just watch because it's there, because you can. Yes, you absolutely can, But you are also going to take into account what else might happen if you keep watching. Now, some foods work a lot like Netflix. They are designed to be easy to keep eating. Combinations of tastes and textures are engineered to make you want more. This is not an accident. And when it happens to you where you want to keep eating, just like you want to keep watching Netflix and you find yourself watching more episodes than you intended, it's not a character flaw. It's how Netflix works. And it's also how some of these foods work. So back to this idea of food freedom. When somebody says they are going to eat whatever they want, whenever they want, in the name of food freedom or not restricting, I totally get where that idea comes from, but I don't think that's actually what food freedom is. Because to me, freedom comes with a feeling. It's not just an action. It's not the absence of rules. It's taking into account how you want to feel and not feeling like food has any power or control over you whatsoever. It's a felt experience. It lives in the body. And it is very different from eating without rules, but also without connection. So many people say, oh yeah, well, I eat that because I don't want to restrict. I know restriction is a problem and I don't want to restrict, so I'm just going to eat it. It's like, well, let's think about Netflix. That would be like me saying, well, I'm just going to watch this episode because I don't want to restrict myself from Netflix because I can, because it's there. It's like, well, that's not how I make decisions on what episodes I'm going to watch or how often I'm going to watch. So why would my decisions around food be different? Now, I want to paint a picture for you of what it looks like when the pendulum stops. Because sometimes when we're in the middle of the swing, in either direction, meaning we're on either direction of this pendulum, it is really hard to imagine that there is a place where the pendulum settles and it's not swinging to extremes. But I want to assure you that this place exists. It is a place where you can sit down to any food and feel genuinely okay. Not because you're following a rule that says you're allowed to have it. Not because you've given yourself blanket permission, but because you actually trust yourself. You know how you feel when you eat it. You know what your body tends to communicate afterward. And you can make a conscious, connected choice about whether and how much feels right for you in that moment. Might it take some gentle conversation if you want to keep eating and you are really thinking about how you might feel? Yes. Very similarly to, do we watch another episode of Netflix or not? There can be some very intentional, conscious decisions and conversations around it. This place is where food isn't loud, where you don't spend the first hour of the morning already thinking about what you're going to eat, where you can be at a party with a table full of food and be present with the people around you because food isn't taking up all the space. It's a place where sometimes you eat something that doesn't make you feel great and you notice it and move on without a spiral, without it becoming evidence that you have failed at something. It's a place where your body doesn't feel like something you're managing or fighting or trying to change. It feels like something you're actually living in. That place is real, and I have seen people find it. I want you to know that it is available to you too. Now, if you are finding yourself like, this whole body connection, like connecting with my body, I don't get it. I don't know what that means. It does not feel safe for me to connect with my body. We're going to go into this more next week. What does safety even feel like in your body? So stay tuned. We're going to kind of continue this exploration next week. If you are like, yeah, this is my issue. I am not connected to my body. We're going to do some further exploration next week. But right now, if any of this is resonating, if you are on the pendulum swing right now, maybe you've given yourself food freedom and found yourself in that confusing place where the relief and the discomfort are existing together. Here's what I want you to know. You have not done anything wrong. This pendulum swing is a real and recognizable part of this process for many people. And it doesn't mean that it's the wrong path. It means there's more work available to you, likely around body connection. So the invitation isn't to just get scared and tighten back up and go back to the rules and the restriction. It's not to put those rules back in place because freedom got messy. That's just going to send the pendulum back in the other direction and continue the cycle. The invitation here is to start getting curious about the body. Not like in a monitoring way, not looking for evidence that you did something wrong, but in a genuinely curious way. What does my body actually feel like before, during, and after eating? What does it communicate when you slow down enough to hear it? And it may be worth asking whether the inner work underneath the eating has been fully addressed. You might find that when you slow down, when you try to tune in, when you try to connect, there's a lot under there. The emotional pieces, nervous system patterns, the parts of you that developed a relationship with food for very specific reasons. Those are the pieces that we need to explore. Because without them, just looking at the food and what we eat and how much we're eating and giving ourselves permission to eat the foods without really getting under the hood, under the surface of what's really going on, that's really where the work is. So if you're wondering what it looks like to do that deeper work with support, because often this work is very hard to do on your own. It is possible. But it can be challenging because your brain, your nervous system will often stop you from going there. But with the support of somebody who understands, a safe, connecting person, you can absolutely get to those layers. So if you want to know what that looks like, a breakthrough call is a great place to start. And you can book one at janepilger.com/breakthrough. And I'll go ahead and put a link in the show notes. Definitely do that. But I want you to leave something to sit with this week. I invite you to develop your own definition of food freedom. Not the one that you have been given. Not the one that means I can eat anything. And not the one that means I follow all the rules. Your own definition of food freedom. What does it include in terms of how you eat and how you relate to food? What does it include in terms of how you feel, both emotionally and physically in your body? Because I believe that when you put both of those things together, the behaviors and the felt sense, you start to get a picture of what you're actually working toward. Not a set of rules to follow, not a blank permission slip, but a real lived experience of being free with food and connected to yourself at the same time. That's what this work is moving toward. And I trust that you are already on the way. That's what I have for you today. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Binge Breakthrough. You can find the show notes and any resources mentioned at bingebreakthrough.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to have future episodes delivered to you each Wednesday. And remember, your 5-star rating and review will help others discover these life-changing concepts. See you next week.